Welcome to the Advisor Summit, the podcast where financial advisors gain analytical insights and tactical strategies from the industry's top minds. The new episode is starting now.
Erica Pauly, welcome back to the Advisor Summit. We are so excited to have you, and I'm truly excited today because we are going to talk all things dinner seminars. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions about dinner seminars. I think there's some talk that they're outdated, that they don't work anymore. And you just recently wrote an amazing article, and it was really inspiring about how they are still a good funnel. They do still work, but there's some cautionary tales in there that people need to be aware of. And they really should know the data before they get into it. So yes. I'm excited today to dive in. I love the truth that you speak, and just data in general with real back numbers is huge. So thanks for joining today.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yay. So let's start kind of from the top with what's been talked about with dinner seminars. And I know the mail houses are going to come after me, but a lot of, this is not me speaking, this is them speaking and what we hear because we hear the tea. But you've said dinner seminars have dominated the charts year after year after year, and that's because you study the data. Why do you think that funnel continues to outperform despite everybody saying that it's dead, it doesn't work, it's outdated, etc.?
Yes, you're not wrong. So there's so many people hop on there like, we don't do them anymore, or we did them for 6 months and they didn't work. Always to those people, my next question is, well, why? And almost always their answer is, well, I just didn't feel like we got the return, or the people were weird. It's all this anecdotal evidence that they're showing to me, and I'm like, well, tell me in the data, like where did they fall off, or was the ROI low, or was it conversion rates? And they're like, I don't know, it just didn't work. That drives me crazy because data is saying something totally different. Partially why I think that people feel this way is that the demographic that are coming to the events and the demographic that are closing from them and that people are having success with are very, very different than they were 3 or 4 years ago. They're not the same type of people. And if the advisors aren't picking up on that and they're still trying to do the old way, they will not have success. They will not close them. And big part of that is the higher net worth people. We're going to talk about that much later. I'll bring that up. But my biggest caution to everybody who says they don't work is, okay, well, are you studying the people? They are shifting. They need trust now. They need relationship now. It used to be very transactional and people could close them. You could get them in. They wanted to come in. They wanted to hear about the product and they would close. That is not how the sales process has to look anymore. It is building relationship, and they're taking much, much longer, which we'll dive much more into later. But that is, I think, why people say they're not working and why the data is saying otherwise, because it's just a different type of person coming to the events.
Yeah. I think that's honestly in general with a lot of marketing, though, is there's a shift happening that it is a different type of person in a lot of these marketing funnels. So I also think for advisors in general, this is such a tale of you are in a relationship business. It is a trust-funded business, not necessarily a money-funded business, and you have to have that exchange of trust. So
a mentor of mine always used to say, and I love this line, I'm taking it from her, but she always used to say, you sell the invisible. And they do. Like, they're just talking with people and asking them to hand over their entire life savings based on trust. So yes, to your point.
Yeah, selling the invisible. I love that. One of the biggest surprises from the article was that dinner seminars are still bringing in the highest net worth prospects of any funnel in 2025. So I want to kind of let that sink in for a second. Out of TV, radio, I mean, really client events, any funnel, they are the highest net worth prospects. Why is that happening right now?
I don't know the why. I truly don't. I think it's fascinating to watch it happen. I haven't come across any studies or any offices that I've worked with that are like, hey, you know, that we're marketing a different way. Some people are increasing the IPA, which is a piece you can change on who you're sending the mailer to. So some people are increasing the minimums. But all advisors know, like, a lot of people can slip through the cracks still through that. It's not always 100% accurate that you're going to get that many people. And a lot of people are mailing to like 250,000 and above IPAs, which is income producing assets. But the actual average case size from 2022 was $410,000. So the average case size back then. In our 2025 study, it was $743,000. So, I mean, a huge jump. I wish I could tell you why. I wish I had that magic bullet. I don't. But the data speaks to $300,000 per new client written. I mean, that alone is so much more revenue for these advisors. So it is happening. If I find out why, we'll do another podcast on that one.
I gotta know. You know me, I have to know all the details. Do not leave me hanging. But I also think that's very freeing for advisors because with a higher average case size, you don't have to close as many. So when you feel that, oh man, I'm just not closing as many, or I'm having struggles in this and this, you absolutely should check that out and understand why you're not closing, but you're also still gonna get a great ROI because they are higher producing people.
Yes.
Huge. Okay, let's talk about percentages. The percentage of dinner or business from dinner seminars has stayed very consistent, around 13 to 15%, even while total new business has grown. What does that tell advisors?
Yes. So in the study, which we'll talk about how you guys can get it later, you'll see in 2022 and 2023, the actual millions that were written was low, but it was about 13 to 14% of the overall business, like from all the marketing funnels. When you look at 2024 and 2025, it's millions and millions more of new business in that study. Partially, it's strictly because we just had more people in the study. So I want people to understand that piece. Like we went from having 50, 60 people in a study to 100. So the millions increase there. The other part of that is the average case size. So they're literally writing more business from people. But it's still 13 to 15% of the business of all marketing funnels that we study in our aggregate studies, year over year over year. So the advisors who are saying, they don't work or people aren't doing them anymore, look at the data. That's not what the data is saying. The data is saying that 15% of the business coming in from everything that we study is still coming from that. It is still consistent. It is still a good marketing funnel. They're not dead. So I wanted to at least, they say that all the time. And I'm like, it's the same thing. It's been 13 to 15% for 5 years.
Everything. Yeah. And that's huge. And I think part of the reason maybe they think that they're dead is because of close rates. So let's kind of talk about that for a second. And you help advisors really understand that there has been a declining close rate. There's no, there's a full understanding there. There's no question about that. And we saw this in the study from 25% in 2022 to 17% close rate in 2025. Kind of a large difference there. Mm-hmm. It doesn't automatically mean there's performing worse, especially when the average case size has risen. But can you kind of explain potentially maybe some of the whys that's happening or what advisors should be aware of when that happens?
Yeah, this is where the data piece absolutely comes into play, and we need to look at a lot of different pieces to explain that. This is why it's a journey. This is why we need the full picture. So close rates always drop when we have higher net worth individuals. And so we already talked about, like, that's risen year over year over year by $300,000 over 4 years. So naturally, the close rate's going to drop. So for the advisors out there, yes, maybe you have a sales process problem, but nationwide, statistically speaking, when your average case size rises, your close rate will drop. That doesn't mean necessarily that there's a problem. Our benchmark for close rate is a 30%. So when people see a 17% for dinner seminars, they automatically assume they're failing. We gotta, the sales process sucks. What I would heed caution to people who do see it declining, specifically for dinner seminars, is I would go look at your cost per set. That's going to be kind of a North Star for people, because what that means, if it's about $1,000, around there, $1,000 cost per set, you are fine and you are getting just as many leads as you need to get. This is not a lead generation problem. If it's higher than that, then yeah, we have a conversion problem, and that's a totally different conversation. But if it's about $1,000 per household set, you are getting enough leads, and you can plan to only close 17%. The other piece that comes into this is when the close rate drops and the average case size increases, our cost per client increases. Even if you're getting enough leads, even if your cost per set is fine, the cost per client is going to rise. It used to be $6,000, and that is like our overall benchmark for everything, including referrals and all of that. But for dinner seminars specifically, it's about $8,000 per new client. Wow. That's a lot more than it used to be. That scares people. And when they see that, they're like, oh my gosh, that used to be what radio and TV cost. Mm-hmm. Then when we have to dive into ROIs. So what will happen is the first year ROI, when your close rate drops and your cost per client rises, the next thing you need to go look at is your ROI. the first year ROI because of that will drop because those people are taking so much longer to close. And so then we guide people looking at year-to-date ROI, which we'll talk about later. But it's a full picture. There's so many things that they need to be looking at, and each office is different. Like I wish I had this X plus Y equals Z sort of a deal for everybody, but it's not. Some people, it's the cost per set that's too high, and then that's a conversion rate issue. Some people, the cost per client raises, and it's not a problem at all because your year-to-date is fine. Yeah. So I don't have a super clear picture on that, but my heed to caution everybody is look at everything.
Yeah. Or hire Erica Pauly for monthly coaching. That's also
there we go. Or that too.
that's also an option there for sure. That's what I would recommend fully. But I think it's good. I think that also, again, tells the tale. You need to look at the whole picture. You cannot just be dialed in on one thing. It doesn't tell the full story. And especially as we kind of move into talking about ROI, I think there are so many advisors out there, and I talk to them constantly, and they're like, but my ROI. ROI should not be the first thing that you look at. It is not always the indicator of what's happening. But let's talk about ROI. First, I kind of want to make sure everyone understands the difference when you talk about first year ROI versus year to date. So kind of walk us through that, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what's the most accurate way to judge seminar success with ROI.
Yes. So first year ROI is basically everything that you spent this year and that you have made from those people this year. Year to date is looking at, we keep the costs the same. It's everything I spent this year, but we're taking against everybody that you've written this year. I don't care if you met them last year. The reason why this becomes important is because these higher net worth people take so much longer to close. And I want to clarify that because I don't necessarily mean it actually takes more appointments. For some offices, it might take 4 or 5, but for most of them who have figured this out and they have dialed in on the trust and the communication and the relationship, it's more of just touch points. It's many more days between appointments. So it's not 4 to 5 to 6 appointments. It's our benchmark is 10 to 15 days between appointments. These higher net worth are going months. They're going 1 month, 2 months, 3 months even. They have the luxury and the ability to wait out crisis. They have the luxury and ability to be on vacation and not really care. It's not as urgent for them. And so the piece to this is you might have met somebody in October of 2025 and they're just closing now, but they're a $3 million case. Totally worth it. That would, pay for the entire seminar. And so that is why we start looking at the difference. I personally have started measuring year-to-date ROI on dinner seminars specifically because it's the highest net worth people that we're seeing. When you look at it that way, the year-to-date ROI, I went back and looked from 2022 through 2025, it has only increased. So it has gone up every single year if we look at it from that lens. If we look at it from first year, it doesn't look like that. And so this is why it's so important to know where to look and know what the data is telling you to do. Does that make sense on why we look at year to date versus first?
No, huge.
Okay.
And I think it's interesting. I love that. I didn't know why higher net worth people take longer. And so that's a really interesting perspective. Waiting out the crisis, they're on vacation, it's not necessarily urgent. And that was always a curiosity for me. So I love that that's a piece of it. So I think too, when you look at year to date, and it has risen every single year, we see just that the people that are doing it consistently, also it really makes a difference. If they're doing it, you can't just do one and then say, oh, it didn't work, or you can't just do a couple and have zero training or zero, changing it at all. I think that's a massive thing to take note of too. You have to be consistent in it. So,
can I add one more point to that one? Okay. Another data point that helps tell this story is the pending people. So like we're saying, they take forever. I literally this morning at 7 a.m. did a coaching call with a client, and he's like, I think we're going to turn off dinner seminars. They're not working. We haven't written much from them this year. Where I was like, well, let's go look at how many people are in the sales cycle right now. How many people are pending? Not their money is pending, but their open opportunities. He had 30 people that were sitting between a second meeting and a close within the next month. And so pending is a huge one here for advisors to look at before you decide to shut the funnel off or feel like it's not working. Go look, what are the open opportunities that you're sitting in front of? If they're higher net worth, touch them, send them something, reach out to them. They may or may not come in for another month, but at least you know what is sitting there and have potential from, that event 3-4 months ago.
Yeah, that's huge. I think that's another thing we really preach is you don't always need more, 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 more. You need to harness in on who you have and what you can do to fulfill with the needs that you already have. It's
Yep.
hugely important. I also want to talk about topics because I think everybody and their mother wants to know what topic works, what topic works, what topic works. And from the study, taxes came in as the highest ROI topic, which
It did.
floors me because it's the thing I want to talk about the least. Maybe it's because we just did tax season and it was horrible and I hate it every year and I just get angry. But it's important to know, I know, blah, blah, blah. So it came in as the highest ROI topic. One, we've seen also kind of this rise of estate planning. So why do you think one, taxes is a big topic? And then secondarily to that, other came in as the second highest topic. So kind of talk to me a little bit about those two.
Okay, so taxes makes so much sense. Any advisor listening to this is going to know because the higher net worth people care about taxes, right? So they want to save on taxes. That is such a hot topic for them because they care about it because they're the ones paying the most in taxes. So that falls beautifully in line with the data, which is when I love when that happens because it proves me right. But those, yes, that came in as the number one ROI. The second one, other. I think this is probably, no one else thinks this is the best insight, but I think it's one of the best insights from the study because advisors constantly want to know what's working, right? Like, tell me the unicorn, tell me the magic bullet. The fact that other and what's included in other, I'll give you guys the definition in a second. The fact that that came in second is so telling because what's included in other is all of the very random names and kind of customized type events that these seminars that these advisors are putting on. Now, it might be that it was like a tax seminar, but they named it something different. And so for our study, if it didn't actually have taxes in the title, we didn't put it in the taxes bracket. Other was all the stuff that the advisors have named or that are different. And for two reasons. I love that because it encourages advisors name the thing that best suits your office and your brand and your demographic. Know what they're looking for. That's going to be one of the highest ROIs. Secondarily, when we do that and when you all do customizations in names, it's very hard from a data standpoint for us to segregate those things out. Basically saying in that other category, there might be estate planning. There might be taxes. There might be just how to save for retirement. Like there's all these different types that really could potentially fall in other categories. But when you name something on your own, it's very hard from a data standpoint for us to pull those things out and show you guys really qualitative stuff from it. So it's not to say don't do that. I think you absolutely should do that. I think just from a data aggregation standpoint, we have to lump a lot of things into that category too.
I think that's huge though. And I think, again, in this era of AI, you have to be authentic to yourself. And people are going to very much sniff out inauthentic people and disingenuous people. And I think advisors, again, as a whole, you are exchanging trust. You are selling the invisible. It is important that you know who you are and know what you're good at. Like, it just matters. I always use the reference, I'm 6 foot tall for anyone that's never met me in person. I can't go speak at a petite women's conference and tell them the struggles of being a short woman. Like that does not work and people are going to sniff that out. Like you just have to know who you are and what you're good at. And I love that point about just being yourself and being authentic. That's so key.
Yeah. And I want to speak today, I think too, this is not really on what we're talking about, but I continually hear from advisors, AI is going to take over and they have all these new things where you can like link bank accounts and have AI read it for you and do an analysis. I want to assure advisors back to what you just said. The higher net worth people want relationship. They're going to go to AI and they're absolutely probably going to look a bunch of stuff up, especially the newer generation that's retiring. But they don't want AI to solve the problems for them. They know that it can give them maybe an observation, but it can't build the plan. It's not going to know their dreams. And I feel like advisors are really nervous about that right now. And we're not seeing that. Like from a data standpoint, I'm not seeing a bunch of people not closing because AI told them a different recommendation. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Love that. I think it's really encouraging for advisors, especially that are fearful of that. I do think AI, though, and we've maybe seen this in the data, and you can speak to it so much better than I, but with that stick rate, so when we talk about stick rate, we are talking about the number of people that kept their first appointment versus the number of people that set their first appointment. we've now started to see people use different styles of AI to follow up, different of styles, of any type of electronic
Scheduling.
Yes.
Yeah.
How have you seen that maybe drop the stick rates, if at all, or how do you caution advisors that it still needs to happen to have a person in that role?
Yep. Stick rates have dropped. Um, Not a ton, but they've dropped. And a huge piece of that is because of Google, or whatever it is. What's the thing? Where you like just click the link, right? Calendly.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious. Okay. So a lot of advisors move to Calendly because they're like, oh, it's going to be so much easier and people can just pick whatever works for them. That is not a good move. Like, again, we're going to go back to this is a trust and this is a relationship business. They don't want the AI, they don't want the computer. So, if that's part of your process, include a human with it. Like, I'm fine if there's a reminder internally to reach out to them, to call, to book it, to schedule, to confirm, to do whatever you guys are doing. That should not be on the front stage. It should not be coming from a computer. It should not, send a text, that's fine, but it should actually sound like a human sending it, not to confirm your appointment, blah, blah, blah. It's like, hey, this is Sherry. We're so excited to see you. So we are definitely seeing a drop in stick rates there. Another piece to that, this was the next paper that I published actually that came out the following month, that came out just this month in May. And we broke it down by office size and the different segments. I think it was like 0 to 40 million, 41 to 80, 80 to 120, and 120 and above. So those were the different segments. And we found out that the stick rates specifically are for the smaller offices, for dinner seminars specifically, and not educational events. So I do want to say that it's fascinating to me. And that tells me it's the smaller offices also who are figuring out process. They're just trying to figure out process. It's new. They are probably just trying dinner seminars for the first time. And so I also want to put that in there, that that's also speaking to a part of that drop, not all of it, but part of it, is that it's a very specific subset of people of dinner seminars that are struggling there too.
Interesting. And I love that you deep dive into the data to know that. I think there's a lot of studies out there that are, anecdotal or kind of generalized, but if you don't actually dive into the key pieces of data, you're not going to see those nuances in the smaller offices happening there. I think too, you mentioned this, educational events. Can you talk to us a little bit about the differences of what happened? I know this is supposed to be dinner seminar, but I do think educational events are important and a piece of this. So kind of talk us through the differences there with the data, what you recommend, all of that.
Yeah, the educational workshops are on the rise, from like their percentage. We talked about percentage of business, like where it's all coming from, and that dinner seminars have been between 13 and 15% for years. Educational workshops are rising. They just tied with dinner seminars in our 2025 data for the first time ever, as where percentage of business came from. It's not because they're working better necessarily. Excuse me. It's because more people are doing them. And so I want to make sure that is really clear to people too. They're not outperforming, and in some areas they might be, but it's just more that more people are doing them and trying them and putting them on their funnel. And I absolutely believe in them. I always have. That's always been my shtick, is like, I love educational events. They're a different group of people. And I think people absolutely should try them as well. You threw out a stat at a conference we were at. Would you mind sharing that one?
Yeah, it was wild and it was really interesting. It was that the overlap between the people that actually attend educational workshops versus the people that attend dinner seminars is only 10%. So
Yeah,
it's
that's what it was.
very different groups of people and very different styles of people. I even just think about like you and I would love a dinner seminar, whereas you're probably gonna need more of the educational side. I think that it really does vary, but only 10% overlap there. So it's like, you're not wasting money by sending, dinner seminar mailers. You're not wasting money by inviting people to an educational workshop, because there are going to be very different responses and very different groups of people.
Yeah.
So it happens, but I do think they're important. And we've seen the rise. There are some differences there with, average case size, but again, they're very high. Both of them are great and should be used, and you can use them in tandem too. I also think this also goes back a little bit to know who you are. You might have an advisor in your office maybe that you're potentially training, and they're really educational driven, and they're really good in that role. And you, as the founder and standing advisor, might really be great at the dinner seminars because that's what you know and that's what you've done. So I think, especially as a lot of advisors are bringing on younger advisors and training them, this could be a huge push and a great way to introduce them to workshops and seminars. So, okay, back to the data. If you're finding, what on average do you say is kind of the benchmark for ROI for dinner seminars? Like, if an advisor is not hitting X ROI, then it maybe isn't their shtick and they maybe need to let it go.
Oh, that's a good question. That's a hard question. I'm not going to answer that one only because I'm going to divert us. Because I've seen people doing like a 150 ROI, and it's because their second meeting stick rate is off, and we just need to fix that piece. I have never seen an office that has a fine prospect story, which is what we measure, like the whole sales process. Yeah. If their cost per set is fine and they have a fine sales process, I've never seen one get under a 250 ROI.
Okay.
So to me, the only reason why it isn't working is usually something that's fixable. And that's it. Yeah. The only time I would tell someone to not do it is if they literally hate it and they have other marketing funnels on their stool that are working and that are scalable and dialable. And that's a whole other conversation of how that marketing funnel should look. Yeah. But if they have other things that they can build and turn up or down, and they hate the dinner seminars and they can't stand the people, well, then that's personal preference, but that's not data driven, right? That's because you don't want to do it. But I would never tell someone to not do it, even if they're sitting at like a 150 or even losing money.
Yeah. No, that's important. And I think too, knowing your numbers is huge. This is a huge tale to know your numbers and know your processes and know what's happening. And I kind of want a quick review too for people that don't really know the prospect story. Let's just give a brief overview of benchmarks for that. It can be dinner seminar specific, or if you want to do overall benchmarks, that's fine. But when we talk about the prospect story, we talk about first the stick rate, which is the number of kept first appointments versus set first appointments. What is the benchmark there that people should be looking at for stick rate?
For all of your marketing funnels, it should be 70%. If you're sitting at a 65 for dinner seminars specifically, you're fine. Don't stress it.
Don't stress. Don't stress. This small stuff, okay? I won't tell every advisor, you're fine. It's okay. Okay, so next then we look at a couple of other benchmarks. So then we look at how many, the stick rate, and then how many moved to that second appointment. What should be the benchmark there from first to second appointments?
60% overall. If you are an advisory practice as multiple advisors, I would highly encourage you to have a qualification piece in there, because that will start to drop as you bring advisors in, and you won't hit the 60%. And the number one reason they'll tell you is because they're not qualified. So just know that. We can also throw in like the number of qualified people who kept a first meeting, but that's not in our prospect story. That's just a fun little extra tidbit for everybody. But yeah, of the people who keep a first, 60% should move and set a second meeting.
Okay, and then of those 60% that set that second meeting, how many should keep that second meeting?
80%, and that doesn't deviate per the source. That's also the easiest one to fix if you have issues there, and that didn't even deviate for dinner seminars.
Perfect. What are some common ways that you fix that problem if people have a problem from set second to kept second?
Usually it stays between appointments. So if you don't know how many days, so many advisors are in the blind on this. They say our office policy is 1 week. I'm telling you how, like, I've heard that so many times, and we go and look at it and it's like 21 days. They're aghast at the fact. They're like, well, I thought they were on the calendar. And then I talked to marketing, and marketing's like, well, no, they called in and they rescheduled 3 times. So to have the real data and not just our office policy is massively important here. Another piece is personal follow-up. This is where AI is becoming a problem, where people are like, hey, we'll just send them some automated, like, hey, fill these things out for your next appointment or whatever it is. And they don't show because there's no personal touch. One of the biggest ways you can fix this is sending a bomb video, a personal call. Hey, we talked about whatever. I'm excited to see you on Tuesday. Whatever you guys want to put in there, but the personal touch will fix that within a week.
I think that's huge. That's one of the biggest takeaways, I think, for me, is just know how many days between the appointments and not what your policy is. That's massive. Nope, hugely. So of those 80% that stick, how many do we expect to close overall from start to finish? So kept first to closed funded client is what percentage as a whole, and then as dinner seminars?
As a whole, kept first to client. So everyone that keeps the first meeting, 30% of people should close. I am going to shift our benchmarks in 2027. I didn't shift them in 2026. So I'm shifting them in 2027 to 20% for dinner seminars specifically, as long as we continue to see the average case size rise. Do not be defeated if you are sitting at a 20% there. That's okay. That's what's happening. I would just make sure that you have a high average case size. If you're sitting at 150,000, it shouldn't be that low. Those people are transactional and you should be able to close them. So again, it's hard to do hard and fast things because it's all living and moving and breathing. But yeah, 30% overall, 20-ish, 20 to 25% for dinner seminars specifically.
That's perfect. And you've heard it here. You heard it here first, folks. We're moving benchmarks for 2027, which is wild. This is wild.
Yikes.
It's good though. It's very freeing, I feel like, for advisors that have felt that for this last year and kind of know it's declining, but really need a hard, fast number. I think it's helpful. So if you had one kind of final message for advisors about seminar marketing in 2026, what would it be?
Yep. And I just said it. I'm going to say it again. Data. What you guys used to look at and what used to matter doesn't matter anymore. Stop looking at the old stuff. You have to know all the different points to measure. Some are North Stars, some point you to somewhere else. It is a living, moving, breathing journey, and it continues to shift. Stop putting it in a box and stop thinking that just because you set something or it was like this last year that it's going to be like this year. It's not. The people are changing. The process is changing. Your team is changing. There's so many things that are changing day to day. So stop trying to fit it in the thing that it used to be, because it's not anymore, particularly dinner seminars.
Yeah, it's evolving, and I think most marketing funnels are, and we're seeing that shift with introductions of new things, and it's important not to look at the past, but look at the future. So any other stats for dinner seminars you want to touch on? Anything from the study that you think is important that we maybe didn't discuss?
No, the only thing that comes into play with the year-to-date ROI is gap. We've covered that at length. I'm actually writing a paper on that coming out in June. But you get your year-to-date ROI by measuring your gap. So that could be something if you are someone who's familiar with that. If you're not, email our team, by the way. Like, you can always email hello@TrackThatAdvisor and say, hey, I heard on the podcast about gap. Can you send me some information on that? If you are a member of the $10 billion library, there is a ton of information in there already. And then our July study will be on gap specifically. So those are for purchase for, I think, like $100, just the study itself, or you can become a member of the library. So
perfect.
Gap would be the only other one, but yeah.
I love it. And we talk about gap a lot, so I like that. Email our team because we talk about it. But I think it's important to know, if you do want this study, Everything Dinner Seminars, you can email our team at hello@trackthatadvisor.com, and it's for sale for $100 for the study, as well as, you'll get the podcast and kind of a 5-minute overview from Erica. You also can join our $10 billion library. It's on our website. It's very quick to join. It's very cheap. And Erica releases a new study every single month on a different marketing funnel, overall things like advisor payouts, benchmarking, looking at different places across the nation. It's really, really good studies. So feel free to join that. Again, it's on our website, trackthatadvisor.com, and then it's called the $10 billion library, and you can sign up for that or email hello@trackthatadvisor.com, and we can get you settled. So Erica, thank you for talking all things dinner seminars. It's one of my favorite funnels, so I hope other people feel that same way. And yeah, I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.